You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hello, Heritage Radio Network listeners tuning in from 165 countries around the world, about 1 million listens a month. And today, I know every single one of them is listening to this episode of Tech Bites, the show where we look at the intersection of food and technology. And today that intersection is Ozempic. I don't think you can be on the internet, the computer, news, digital media, radio, newspaper, any type of media and information channel without having heard about the drug Ozempic. It was originally designed and is designed to help people with type 2 diabetes. It came on the scene back in 2017, and as it's a new drug, as with any new thing, any new technology, it takes a little while to see what's going to happen and how people react to it and what kind of impact it has. And it turns out that it creates weight loss in people who are taking it. So very quickly, off-label use for it became very, very popular for people who are using it for medical weight loss, health weight loss, and lifestyle fashion weight loss. Now it's something that we're hearing a lot about. And the interesting thing about Ozempic, which brings it to this show, is that it creates, or actually it takes away, not creates, it takes away people's craving for food and desire to eat and makes them feel satisfied so they eat less and lose weight. And if you're in a health situation where your weight is potentially life-threatening, that's a really great thing. But I wonder, here at Heritage Radio, we talk about making the world a more delicious and equitable place. We care a lot about where our food comes from, and food is one of the conduits that we have to each other, families, friends, neighborhoods, countries. What happens if we lose that connective thread? So we're going to talk about that today. And here to sort of unpack a lot of this with us, because it's a very complex topic, is Dr. Lisa Young. She has a lot of letters after her name. She is a PhD, an RDN, a CDN. She is a nutritionist. She is an author. She's an adjunct professor at NYU. She's amazing. She's she's lots of guests actually rolled into one. So Lisa, thank you for coming out to Roberta's Pizza in Bushwick, where we have the Heritage Radio Network studio, to have a conversation with me about Ozempic.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Is it something that people are asking you to talk about? Is it something that you're hearing about from patients and students and other colleagues and requests like this one from media to come and talk about it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a very, very big topic. And as you mentioned, it's also a new topic that will have many, we know there are side effects when you're on the drug, but unintended consequences like the ones people not wanting to eat and not only not wanting to eat, but losing the whole pleasure of eating and taking away sort of the whole desire to dine out, to eat, we socialize when we eat. So that's just gone in so many people who take it.
It's a really interesting side effect, and desire for things is often desire for or lack of desire for something is sometimes a side effect of different kinds of drugs. But this is really specific and really potentially touches a broader industry and market and touches us in a societal way. What I do want to say right at the beginning of this show, I mean, Ozempic, the pharmaceutical industry, weight loss, doctors, the insurance industry, there are a lot of things that are important issues and important questions around Ozempic, as there are around any drug. What I want to say very clearly before Dr. Lisa and I have our conversation is that Ozempic is a drug for type 2 diabetes, which is an illness that requires care. The use of it for that is between a patient and a doctor, and it's great that it helps people manage that so they can live healthier lives. weight is kind of a different issue because on one end of the spectrum, we have people who have weight issues that are potentially mortality points that are so severe that it really is damaging to their health. That's one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum, we have people who want to be slimmer so they can look better and be happier and fit into smaller clothes and look like a supermodel. Those are very, very two different points. So what we are not talking about, we are not talking about people who are using it medically in any shape to help solve health issues that are important for their survival. We are not talking about people's weight and body shapes and types as being positive or negative, pro all body types, anti all body types. All of those things are personal, they're subjective, they're based on your health, your point of view. They're certainly tied into the Ozempic question or the Ozempic use or the Ozempic popularity. But we're going to put those things aside. What we're going to focus on today is really how this drug and other types of drugs in this class, because now, we have multiple pharmaceutical companies that are rushing to produce and put onto market the same type of drug, things in pill form so you don't have to inject, things that are less expensive, things that even have a stronger impact in terms of weight loss and stronger impact in tamping down the desire to eat and increasing a person's sensation of being satisfied. So this is a whole category of things that is coming, that is here, that is the future, that is now, that is something that will be impacting us societally probably for many years to come because it is so new. So I just wanted to make that clear that if you're listening to this and you're interested in Ozempic and you're interested in some of the other categories and conversations that I just mentioned, there are lots of great places and lots of great conversations to get that information. This episode is not going to be one of them, though. Here at Heritage, we're so interested in food and how it's produced and making it delicious and making it accessible and having it be good for people and the planet. And we travel and we share stories of food and recipes, and it's our home and it's our comfort. To have those things taken away, it just seems it seems a little hard to imagine. So that's the conversation that we're going to have today. So Lisa, tell us from your point of view, I know you've written about Ozempic and have spoken about it before, what you just expressed. How many people do you think in terms of the population are on this drug? How many people do you think will be moving into it? And what's the ripple effect of having a percentage of the population just simply not interested in eating?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers because they keep changing as the predictions, but it's in the millions and the many millions of people that are going to be taking these medications. And on the positive, you lose weight easily. Now, yes, Ozempic was marketed as a diabetes drug, but let's get real, many people taking this class of drugs were taking it for lots of other reasons as well. So for health issues, by all means, if people need to do something like this, I understand. And as a registered dietitian, I help people make lifestyle changes really to manage disease and also to lose weight. The challenge, the worrisome part for me as a nutritionist is, and often people think of, nutritionists are going to tell me what not to eat, what not to do. We don't want to take the pleasure out of eating. Eating is pleasurable, eating is love, eating is family, eating is culture. There's so many different aspects to the enjoyment and the pleasure of eating. And what happens with this class of drugs is that whole system is sort of gone. You're just not interested in food. Many people have side effects and they're uncomfortable, but even for those who don't, they just don't really want to eat. So they go to Rome and they go to Europe and they go to different places, and people are always, let's go to this restaurant we heard of, or they're going all over the country and they want to try a restaurant. They're coming to Bushwick and they want to try Roberta's. That whole piece is gone. And it's fine if it's short term. It's fine if you could lose some weight, get on your way, and then continue on your own. But I worry if people can live this way permanently and what will happen when they go off of it, if they choose to go off of it.
So let's just clarify when we talk about class of drugs. Explain to us what that means. What class of drug is Ozempic?
These are a class of drugs, and they're called GLP-1s. And what they do is they basically slow down the rate at which the food is really kind of going through you so you feel full. And so Ozempic is the one that everybody seems to talk about, but there are other drugs like Mounjaro, for example, which might even be more popular now because that is specifically for people who want to lose weight, because what was happening was people who needed Ozempic for diabetes were not able to get it because the people who just wanted to lose weight for whatever reason were sort of moving into their territory. So there's other drugs. There's that drug, but generally the class is very similar, and it causes rapid weight loss because it basically tells you to stop eating so you're full from eating very little food, much less food. In fact, people do need to eat for sustenance. And in this case, we worry that people are not getting enough. And they're not eating the protein, the fiber, and some of the foods, and then not getting the vitamins and minerals they might need because they just lose their appetite.
Technology and science. It's amazing, one, how the human body works, and two, how we can manipulate it and sort of game it and hack it to do other things. I wonder how the CPG or consumer packaged goods industry, those are the giant companies that make cereal and ice cream and potato chips and snack food and frozen dinners. They've been developing and creating processed foods for decades, specifically with the intent of making people want to eat them, having ingredients in them like sugars and fats and things that we love, that we almost become addicted to, so we just crave and crave more and more and more. What are they developing now for the group of people who have no craving?
Well, it's interesting because, eating less is not going to be good for business, obviously. So they're very worried about that. I mean, one of the ways they make a lot of money is by selling more food, by selling food in big portions that are cheap to produce and that only cost a couple of cents more a person, but over on the aggregate, it does add up to a lot. So in this case, eating less is definitely going to affect their bottom line. And what many companies are now doing is trying to market smaller portion foods that are going to be specifically high in protein, which is a nutrient that you need and that they're worried about people losing because they don't want them losing lean body mass if you lose weight quickly. And so protein tends to be the buzzword to make sure that people eat enough protein. You could get protein in chicken, in fish, in yogurt, in beans, in vegetables. The list goes on and on and on. Eggs, but they want to make more money. So if they come out with, a petite portion of something high in protein, they may be able to market it specifically for people taking these drugs and then charge more money. Because at the end of the day, that is the goal for them to be able to make money. So it's an interesting phenomenon because how did we get this way in the first place? I mean, in the 1950s, we didn't have an obesity problem, and the obesity problem really started as we had a proliferation of much more to eat, food available 24/7 in big portions, and particularly the ultra-processed foods, the junk foods that are easy to market, easy to package, and easy to eat on the run. So did that get us to this problem where where a lot of us, not all of us, need these drugs, and now they're coming to the rescue with smaller portions of nutrient-dense foods? It's interesting.
It is an interesting place, and you mentioned proteins and smaller portions, and protein does seem to be one of the buzzwords about food in so many conversations now, and has been for the past couple years, and it's growing. I think the protein conversation, I don't see it abating I don't see any shortage of protein products in the future either. I see them continuing to evolve and appear on the marketplace. I'll take this point to say that since 2019, I have been working as a coach and a personal trainer. I'm certified. I'm a USA boxing coach. It's my full-time hustle. I work with people aged 14 to 86. I work with competitive athletes, recreational, amateur, professional, and regular people. And as a coach, people have different goals, but almost every single person has a goal of being leaner, being stronger, and losing some amount of weight. The amount of weight that people want to lose varies from person to person and situation. So exercise and physical movement is definitely a really important part of being healthy and strong. But ultimately, you need to pair nutrition with that. And I really dislike the word diet. I never use it. I use eating style or nutrition or, what's your food philosophy, because there are so many different things out there right now. And the first step for me with my practice with my clients is having them record and journal what they're eating for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, so we can just get an idea of what's happening. And I tread very lightly with people and how they eat, because it is really one of the most personal things that we do every day. How we eat and what we like to eat is so tied up in what our family traditions are, what our geography is, what our cultural background is, our religious background, our political views, our world views, our environmental views. Do we like to cook? Do we not like to cook? Do we shop? Do we not shop? All those types of things. It really is a very, very complex and extremely personal thing. So in my practice, it doesn't work to give people just a laundry list of things they should or shouldn't eat. We take a look at what they do, what they like to do, their styles, their habits, and then start to make little adjustments. And in my experience, most people are doing a pretty good job. They need to add protein here, or maybe subtract sugar there, or, do different things in the timings. But looking at food through that lens, and then looking at how, if that's all just sort of completely removed, I don't know what I would be telling people or how I would be managing them. I think so much of in the fitness world, in fitness and sports and wellness and health, there is a lot of product now which is simply, powders and bags that you shake, and you make shakes or you make smoothies, and it's adaptogens and greens and protein and plant protein and whey protein and colostrum and, all these different things. And you can just put it all in a blender and put it in a bottle, and that's what you have. And a lot of people do that. I mean, do you think that that's the old sci-fi, Soylent Green, kind of just nutrition in a bottle?
No, I think it's a crazy thing, and I totally agree with you, because when I counsel clients, I'm not as ambitious as you in that I don't ask them to keep a diary for 2 weeks, because I think they'll run the other way. I'm lucky if I can get them to do it for 3 days, which I try to do 3 days, and then I ask them just to find out about their lifestyle. And again, the word diet implies deprivation, so I try to do it in a way. So, what do you like to eat? Where do you eat? Where do you go? What do you do? New Yorkers eat out a lot, so do you cook? So I get into the whole thing. But it's interesting that, then they get these shakes and these powders and these protein powders, and many of them have stevia or other components, inulin, chicory root fiber. Then they get a stomach ache, and then they say they have irritable bowel syndrome and they have GI issues. And we're hearing all sorts of terms and things that we've never heard before. And, these foods are not necessarily healthier for us either. So almost if we went back to sitting down and eating a meal rather than just having a shake, we probably wouldn't have this problem in the first place.
Well, all roads lead back to real food made with real ingredients. Yes. It's a very, very simple piece of advice that we've all heard repeated in many different forms. But if you know what the ingredients are on the label, if the ingredients are actually ingredients, tomato, olive oil, that type of thing, versus long chemical sounding things, you're probably doing okay. Or cooking with just regular ingredients. The tracking of or recording or journaling what people eat for 2 weeks. For me, it's a week, 2 weeks or 3 weeks is good to get a baseline on what's really happening, because then it alleviates any random occurrences because of, a late night out at work, or it was somebody's birthday, or I was traveling, or, I had the flu, or whatever the case may be. But in today's day and age with smartphones, everybody has a phone in their hand, and I'll tell them, just take a picture before you eat it even. I don't need a handwritten account or, some complex app of like measuring things out, but just, a snapshot of this is what I ate at this time of day, and then get an idea of, was it before they worked out, or after, or before work, or late at night, or in the morning, or those types of things, and then just get a snapshot of where we are. And they might forget a little bit at the beginning, but then it's pretty easy to just take a photo of your food before you eat it. A lot of people are doing it anyway for Instagram or TikTok, or social media, and that kind of thing anyway. So in your practice, you are a portion expert. And so what does that mean?
So, people often think, portion control, you have to eat tiny portions.
And we think of it as a little like deprivation,
right,
or
exactly,
I need a tiny bag of
exactly.
something so that I don't eat the whole bag of something.
Exactly. But really, it's not about that at all. In fact, when I wrote, my first book is The Portion Teller. My second book, Finally Full, Finally Slim, is how you can be full eating healthy foods and eating more of the right foods. And I have a chapter, supersize this, downsize that. So it isn't about eating less of everything. It's about eating more fruits and vegetables, whole foods, even allowing yourself whole grains. With this, I want more protein. You have people cutting out grains entirely. And there's no reason that you should cut out oatmeal and healthy grains. It's the white bread products, the cookies, the bagels that you want to cut out. So a lot of times it's really just reorganizing, plate therapy, I like to call it. Try to make half your plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter healthy starch like sweet potato, quinoa, brown rice, something that you like, and then a quarter healthy protein. And if you've got a quarter of your plate healthy protein, chicken, fish, beans, tempeh, that's enough protein. Protein helps you feel full. And it aids in satiety. So in a sense, if you're looking to lose weight, you do not want to be hungry. When you just eat carbs, you will be hungry because your blood sugar would go up. Of course, if you have carbs that have fiber, that's going to help as well. So it's really about enjoying balanced portions and learning, also becoming aware of how big your portions are. People have no idea. They pour cereal into a bowl and they think they're having a cup of cereal because that's the serving on a label. And if I say, hey, measure it out once in a while, they're shocked to learn that they're having 3 cups because the bowl is oversized. Now, you can't eat less of something if you don't even know what you're doing wrong. So it's a lot of that as well, and really becoming aware of your portions and also choosing balanced portions. And I also like to practice positive nutrition. Think about what you can add to your diet before you worry about what you have to take away.
That is a great statement. Think about what you want to add before you start taking something away. That's a perfect moment for us to pause. I'm going to add a commercial break right now. Did you know that Heritage Radio Network is a 501c3 nonprofit? We keep the lights on and the mics hot out of the generosity of members, many of whom are listeners like yourselves, underwriters, and sponsors like this one. Stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. Wisconsin, the state of cheese, makes half of the nation's specialty cheese and wins more awards than any other state or country. Our heritage and traditions, master cheesemaker program, and the American propensity for innovation all put Wisconsin on the cutting wedge of cheesemaking. With over 600 varieties of cheese to choose from and 5,500 national and international awards and counting, Get ready to turn your refrigerator into a trophy case. Enjoying a Wisconsin cheese is basically like winning a gold medal in culinary achievement. Set your mind at cheese. When you bite into a wedge of Wisconsin Wonderful, you know it is made with the ultimate skill and passion possible. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
You are listening to Tech Bites on the Heritage Radio Network. This is the show where we look at the intersection of food and technology. And today we're looking at Ozempic, the diabetes drug turned weight loss sensation. And it has an interesting side effect of helping people lose weight. And the way it does that is it suppresses your desire to eat food, and it sort of slows down your whole digestive process so you feel satisfied and full longer. And while that's great news on the weight loss front for many people, what does that do to our desire to eat? There are many anecdotal accounts out there in the media. New York Times, I was listening to a podcast, The Daily, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I hope Michael Barbaro listens to Tech Bites, and I'm one of his favorite podcasts. And they talked with two women who were on the drug Ozempic to lose weight. One had an extremely positive experience, and it was really the answer to her lifelong struggles to lose weight. The other woman did not have a very positive experience. She had had a complicated relationship with food, had started to see a nutritionist who took her away from the scales and the weight idea and just tried to create a more intuitive relationship for her with food and her eating habits. And she sort of reconciled that and was doing okay. And then her doctor suggested Ozempic. And it created such a profound absence of desire to eat that she became extremely undernourished because she essentially just stopped eating because she didn't want to anymore. And then that is sort of really the other end of the coin. And of course, this experience is unique to her, and everybody's experience is different. But I wonder what happens in a society where we lose the desire to eat, and then we lose that desire for the dinner table or the coffee shop or the farmer's market or having those conversations about food. Food is so much not just what we eat and fuel ourselves with, but it is really the connectivity of our communities. It's how we communicate with people like across language barriers. It's how we take care of our communities from a local level, from the ground up, the farmer's market, the restaurants, our waiters and servers. So what happens if we don't want those products anymore? What happens if we don't want products from the farmer's market and don't want products like pizza? What do we do then? I mean, it seems almost illogical, unfathomable to imagine a world where we don't want to eat and we just need to survive from a nutritional point of view. It's very sci-fi to me. But then so much of what we've talked about on this show is very sci-fi, that I suppose Ozempic itself is a little sci-fi. Do we think that could happen?
You know, I'm listening to you, and it's like I'm thinking what comes to my mind is that, we lab rats. You know, that's just what kept, as you're talking.
We sort of are.
It's like we're lab rats. Like we eat just for sustenance, and then we go on to the next activity. And the pleasure of food, the enjoyment of food, the culture of food, almost like we don't need it. Is it worth it to people to lose weight and then give that all up? And then the flip side of the question is, do people have to deprive themselves and give everything up and give themselves shots in the stomach every week, and to then have side effects and to worry about having to add X grams of protein to maintain a healthy weight?
Well, to answer your first thought, which is, are we lab rats? And I would say to a certain extent, yes, we are. We culturally, globally, societally are developing technologies and lifestyle habits and activities every day. There's something new. And we don't have enough runway to look back and see what the effects are. There are so many things that we take and eat and do and ingest and try. You know, nobody knows what the long-term effects are. You know, certainly scientists and medical companies and food companies and, government agencies try to do their best at, testing, and it's okay, and we're going to approve this for human consumption. But ultimately, we don't know. I mean, ultimately, we don't know what the effects are of these things until we have a few years or a few decades. And then we start to see, oh, this is what happens when we put chemicals into the ground that we grow our food with. Or this is what happens when we eat, meat or drink milk from animals that have been treated with, drugs or antibiotics or hormones or, all those types of things. Or what happens when, we eat food that's grown on a river that has toxic waste in it. I mean, I don't know, all those things. Like human life, I think, is an experiment, and we are lab rats in our own lives, I think, anyway. And there's, I think, a plus and a minus to that. I think there's two sides to that coin. So I'm going to say yes, we are lab rats. The other side about, is it worth it? I'm also thinking about, we've talked on this show and certainly on Heritage Radio Network and certainly in the media and the press and social media, we talk about food as medicine. We talk about food as life. We talk about food being able to make us healthy or heal us in a actual biological medical sense, but then also in a, spiritual, feel-good, quality of life sense. And we've spent so much time, organic, farm labor, farmers market, eat local, about how we make our food and where our food comes from and being thoughtful, because if we're good caretakers for that, the food that we eat will take good care of our bodies, will take good care of, and like the ripple effect of really, thoughtful, mindful eating. Have we not done enough to sort of tip the scales to get everybody to a place where food is medicine and we're all happy and healthy? Is it impossible to tip the scales? Will we never reach that? Or do we just like throw up our hands and walk away from that? It's an interesting thing. I mean, there is a food movement. I mean, we're sitting in Roberta's at this radio station, which is a testament to that movement. The original inspiration for Heritage Radio Network came from a man named Patrick Martins, who owns Heritage Foods, which is on the other side of the block. And it comes from a trip to Italy that he had, and he became involved in the slow food movement a long time ago. So these are all things that have been around forever and a day and are growing, constantly trying to bring more people in. Does something like this say we're not successful, that there are people who are willing to give up the joy of eating to lose weight?
Yeah, I think you bring a really good point, because when you think about food as medicine, and even some medical schools which have been notorious for not really incorporating the nutritional aspect, but rather focusing on drugs, we're seeing, that whole movement seep in very slowly into medical schools, where they have culinary classes where they learn to cook and they learn about the positive aspects and the nutrients in the foods that we're eating and how it's good for health. And so taking a drug like Ozempic is totally the opposite of that. It is not using food as medicine, because you don't want to eat at all. So you're not even really thinking, I have to get my calcium and my vitamins and my beta carotene from the fruits and vegetables. You're sort of taking that whole piece away. And the other thing that came to mind is, the safety issue. If the government and if the FDA and they come along and they say, yeah, this drug is safe to stay on, it's probably safe to be on forever. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying if that
forever changes generation to generation. I mean, forever for the generations behind me, their forever was to 70 or maybe 80 or maybe 90. I read a book called The 100-Year Life, and they talk about the calculations of life expectancy. And people who live in the United States, their life expectancy now is, like 106. And that's just basic average people, because of the lifestyles that we have now and the access with a mind to medical technology and medicine and interventions will increase in their success rates. So that will increase longevity. So forever, I mean, if you're 40 or 50 and you're taking Ozempic and you have to take it every day to maintain your weight and the effects of it, you could be looking at taking it for 60 years
right,
or 50 years.
Yeah, and the question is, maybe something can be medically safe, but is it good for you? Is it good for you? And I don't mean is it good for you just physically? Is it good for you like the whole mental package, the whole life package, the whole enjoying your life, getting pleasure out of your life? Is this the way people want to go through life? Or should they go through life under doctor's orders? That's kind of what it is. If their doctor's saying, I think you'd be a good candidate, and you've tried everything else, maybe you say, okay.
And in some instances, it's life-saving, I'm sure. That's an extremely positive thing for a group of people, for a demographic of people, to have something like that be able to help them. It's a complicated thing, and there's no easy answer, and certainly it's not something that's going away. I think as we progress and we see more of these drugs coming onto the market, becoming more accessible, becoming less expensive, we will see broader and broader use of them, and we'll have to see what the effects are. I will say, again, in my practice, when I work with people, it's very interesting, the relationship of idea that people have about how they want to eat based on their lifestyle, their philosophy. I like organic, I want to eat naturally, I like this type of food, farmers are important to me. Those types of intellectual, philosophical ideas. And that's one lens that people use to decide what they're going to eat. And then when we get into the fitness and health space, they look at it through another lens. And I had a conversation, really interestingly, with a woman who came to me. She had been through a whole battery of long body metric testing at one of the longevity clinics. She's an older woman, and she came to me with her body scans that were looking at her bone density and her muscle density. And she wanted to start working with a coach because she wanted to increase her muscle mass. She wanted to increase her bone density. So I said, okay, strength training is great for that, so we will do that. I said, however, if you want to build muscle and you want to build the strength in your bones and the rest of your body, you need to give your body the building blocks to do that. And the building blocks are in what you eat. So if you want muscle and bone density, you need to eat some protein. How much protein do you eat? And her answer was, enough. And I said, how do you know? And she just said, well, I eat enough. I said, well, how much protein do you eat? And outside of the, sort of intellectual and emotional views that we have about food and how we want to eat, and I eat what I want, and my diet, my nutrition, how I eat is good or great, there is on the other side of that just simply the way the human body works. It's not magic. It's not mystical. There's a very clear chain of events that happens when you eat food and it gets digested, and you exercise and you don't exercise and it goes here or there. It's very clear. It's very specific. That's why pharmaceutical companies are able to produce drugs that do very specific things. So on the one hand, I said, well, let's figure out how much protein you have, because I promise you're probably not eating enough. And you need protein and carbohydrates, because even though people say carbohydrates are bad, they're actually fundamentally like building blocks in your body, and your brain needs them, so they're important. And we had a little bit of a discussion about it, and she was sort of taken aback because it was not something that she ever really considered. So it's an interesting intersection of how we feel about food, what we want to do, the statement we're going to make about the food we choose, but then fundamentally not really understanding how the human body works to get to the physical result that we want. And somewhere they have to meet. And if they don't, I guess one side wins out. The food feel side wins out over the physical side, or in this case of Ozempic, the physical side wins out over the intellectual and the emotional side.
Yeah, but it's very interesting because also, like in the case of, this client of yours, you don't have to, and this often, worries people, and it probably should, you don't have to sit and count how many grams of protein
No.
you're eating for every meal.
No,
People
not
think
at
you
all.
do.
No.
Right? So, but if we look at like their diet and say, okay, where are you getting your protein? Like, what are your food choices? And in the case for osteoporosis prevention and bone health, you also want to look at calcium and vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you have to take a supplement necessarily of calcium. You know, there's lots of ways that you can get it besides for the obvious dairy, but it's looking at the components of your diet without counting the grams and the milligrams, which I almost think that back to the whole Ozempic, people think they need to start counting grams, milligrams, because again, they are like lab rats. And is that what we want to produce? People that are like lab rats?
Well, we're all sort of those lab rats in the experiment that is human life, I think, on this planet and in this time. I mean, we're a show about technology and food, not existential thoughts and questions, but you could have a whole question about, like, what are we really doing here? Which I think is probably another show on another network. All this to say, this is a conversation that could go on and on. This is a conversation people will continue to have. This is a conversation that if you're thinking about taking any kind of drug that you should have with yourself and your doctor and your family or, friends, what's best for you in your life, but also what's best for you in your life. And then we'll see how the big pharmaceutical industrial complex, what they're going to serve up to people. And we'll see how the big industrial consumer packaged good complex serves things up to people to meet, because they're all sort of meeting in the middle because they all want to make money. And maybe the answer is more people studying nutrition or more people teaching nutrition and more things like Heritage Radio Network, where we look at all these questions and try and help people learn more about things so they can make their own choices.
And fitness. I'm going to argue that what you do, because I think, as a nutritionist, I think it's equally important to practice fitness. And when you eat less of the wrong things and more of the right things, and you move your body and find movement you enjoy instead of a prescription, chances are you might be able to lose those couple of pounds that you need to lose.
And food is medicine. The human body is an amazing thing. And sometimes it goes haywire and it does things that we don't want it to do. And sometimes it can be detrimental to us, we can be detrimental to ourselves. But on the flip side of that, the human body is an amazing thing and can heal itself. And everyday things like having a brisk walk or a low jog and that miraculous zone 2 cardio that everybody talks about, the hundreds of things that happen in your body when you do low exertion cardio activity, from like walking or jumping rope or a slow jog or swimming or any of those kinds of things, there are hundreds of processes that start to happen in your body that have a positive impact, from helping you regulate your blood sugar, i.e. insulin, to neurological things that are happening with the transportation of, molecules and energy in your brain, that something as simple and basic as that done regularly can help defend against a long, long list of ailments. So again, the human body is amazing. And understanding how it works and how it works on food is not a bad thing to learn. I am going to stop here and thank Dr. Lisa Young for joining us, because if I don't stop here, she will miss her class and her students will miss out. And we will be here probably until happy hour at Roberta's, because it's such a great conversation and she has so many salient points to share with us. If you're interested in learning more about what she does, learning more about her books, learning more about her point of view about portion size and her thoughts on Ozempic, I saw you had an article on your website, which is drlisayoung.com, about good foods to eat if you are taking Ozempic.
Yes, I did a piece for U.S. News and World Report on that.
What are some of the good foods?
Again, you want to include fruits and vegetables, like people forget about. In terms of the nutrients, you want to make sure you get ample protein, but you don't need a whole cow. So you could get chicken, fish, beans, dairy, eggs. You want to have enough fiber. So that's super important that you're getting from plant-based proteins as well as fruits and vegetables. And Some people experience nauseous and their discomfort, and so they have to really avoid large meals of greasy foods, which you want to do anyway.
Right.
So it's really the healthy diet.
Right. So again, drlisayoung.com. You can find her on social media at Dr. Lisa Young. If you want to take a look at my coaching business, I'm online at JKL Lifeworks.com. You can find me on social media at JKL Lifeworks. If you have an idea for a show or you want to talk about something you heard today or on one of the other 298 episodes of Tech Bites that are online and archived at heritageradionetwork.org, get in touch, techbites@heritageradionetwork.org. Tech Bites HRN on social media. We talk about a lot of things, and it doesn't matter if it's technology, lab tech, medical tech, restaurant tech, money tech, computers, AI. All roads and all conversations ultimately lead us to wanting to have a more delicious and equitable, healthy life. I'm Jennifer Leuzzi, and this is Tech Bites.